Hi, I'm Egor Savochkin, engineering manager at Booking.com. I currently lead two engineering teams at Booking FinTech. One is responsible for letting partners managing their invoices and payments, over 3 million partners. And another one is responsible for automation of partner support using AI. The topic of delivery metrics is not new for me. I've been practicing DevOps, DORA metrics, bottleneck analysis since maybe 2016, several years before I joined in Booking. And over the last 4 years at Booking, we applied these ideas, first in my teams and then in broader context across several engineering tracks. Today, I want to share what worked, what surprised us, and how we moved from gut feel alone to evidence-based improvement. Here is a situation you've probably seen. A team is struggling. Delivery has slowed down. So you call a meeting. The technical lead says, it's tech debt. We need a refactoring sprint. The architect says, no, it's coupling. We need microservice. The agile coach says, no, your rituals are broken. We need a better definition of done. So who wins? 3 experts, 3 diagnoses, 3 different solutions, and each one sounds very reasonable. And too often, not the person who is right, but the loudest voice in the room or the most senior person. And you may tell me, okay, let's bring data, but very often, when we bring data, we often overreact to noise. 2 critical defects in a row or a slower sprint, is that a real problem or just a normal variation? That is the real issue. In complex systems, expertise matters, of course, but expertise alone is not enough. We need a way to turn our opinions into testable hypotheses. Let me start with a simple example. I live in Amsterdam, about 2 kilometers away from the office, and first I walked about 25 minutes. Then I bought a bike, down to around 7 minutes. By the way, in Amsterdam, buying a bike is not an innovation at all, and we call it rather onboarding. Later, I found a shorter route, down to 4 minutes. Each flat section here is just a stable process with some normal variation around the average. No 2 trips take exactly the same time. Wind, red lights, bridges, that is just noise. The important point is this: the level changed only when I changed the system in a meaningful way. First the bike, then the route. But what if I made random changes instead? Look at this chart. Do you see any meaningful improvements here? I don't. Yet, there were 3 changes here. First, new running shoes. A tiny gain in visible and normal variation. Then a new route. Slightly better, but still no visible shift. Then road construction, and I lose more than I gained. That is what software delivery often looks like. Teams make changes, but if those changes are too small or aimed at the wrong problem, they just disappear into the noise. And after a while, people conclude, we tried, nothing works. So what made it work? 3 things. First, I measured what mattered to me. Commute time, not 15 different indicators. just one clear outcome, how long it takes me to get to the office. Second, I choose the most promising hypothesis. The constraint was transport, not shoes, so I bought a bike. I changed the part of the system that could create a visible shift. And third, I verified that shift. Of course, in my example, this shift was quite obvious, but software delivery is rarely that clean. Improvements are often smaller, and the same change can behave differently in different teams, and the system is usually much noisier. But that is the formula. Matter what matters, choose the most promising hypothesis and verify if it worked. Let's dive into each of these steps. Ideally, we would connect team improvements directly to company outcomes. We improve deployment, architecture, or team practices, and then immediately see how this affects revenue, room nights, EBITDA, or customer value, something like that. That would be perfect. And in fact, for product changes, Booking.com, for example, often does this with so-called A/B experiments. We just deploy the same different versions of components to production and compare the outcome. Unfortunately, it is not easy to A/B test things like pair programming or monolith migration or org changes. First of all, we do not have thousands of identical engineering teams lying around, right? So we need a practical proxy. Enter DORA. Who knows what DORA is? Okay, good. DORA stands for DevOps Research and Assessment, and since around 2014, it has studied thousands of technology organizations to understand the correlation between practices, capabilities, and better delivery performance and company outcomes. Out of this research came DORA metrics. Deployment frequency, change lead time, change failure rate, etc., etc. DORA research found that stronger delivery metrics are associated with stronger organizational outcomes. Again, DORA metrics is not the ultimate outcome we care about. The real outcomes are still customer satisfaction, revenue, room nights, all that stuff, but DORA gives us a useful proxy that a team can track, directly influence, and get faster feedback. How does it work in practice? We do not improve DORA metrics directly. The dashboard is not the patient, the delivery system is. So we focus on a capability. For example, we introduce a deployment automation. If that change works, then we should see delivery signals move. Deployment frequency should go up, change lead time should go down. That reduces deployment overhead. We see less coordination, less manual work, less waiting. When deployment becomes cheaper, the team naturally starts deploying smaller PRs more often. And smaller PRs are easier to review, less risky, easier to diagnose when something breaks, and gives us faster feedback from the user. That reduces recovery costs and improves experience for both users and developers. And then we choose the next capability and repeat the loop. But the loop only works if we choose the right capability to improve. So the next question is, where should we intervene? This brings us back to the second step, choosing the most promising hypothesis. Very often, someone approaches you and suggests a reasonable improvement idea. Let's improve code review, let's introduce deployment automation, let's refactor this part or that part. Every idea might be good, but the problem is improvement ideas are not free. They consume engineering capacity, attention, coordination. So before we start, we should ask 3 questions. Hold on. What should change in the delivery signals if we are right? What investment is required? And does this address the real constraint of this team? We should not improve something just because an expert likes it or it's fashionable. We want to work where a change has a real chance to create a visible shift. But the most critical step is verification. Did the change actually work? The problem is that delivery metrics move all the time, and most of that movement is just noise. In fact, we can answer this question with a process behavior chart. Let me first explain what it is. You take your chart, for example, this is my bike commute segment, and add 3 reference lines on it: the mean and the upper and lower natural process limits. These limits are not drawn by eye; they're calculated by some special formula based on historical data. I'm not showing the formula here. I heard that every formula cuts the audience in half, so I still want all of you until the end of the talk. But those who are interested can easily find it in that Donald Wheeler's book, or just ask ChatGPT. The chart gives you a simple way to distinguish normal variation from a real signal. So the most simple rule is that every point lying outside of natural process limits is an exceptional event, something exceptional happened. So in this case, maybe I was stopped by the police or I got a flat tire. This doesn't mean that the whole process has changed. That means only one exceptional event happened. But improvement is a shift in the system. Don Wheeler also gives us several rules we can use to detect shifts with process behavior charts. And one standard rule is 8 consecutive points below the mean. In my example, this is the transition from the bike to new route segment. The change was simple. I just found a new route, a shorter route. So did it work? The PBC says yes. The process shifted to a better level, and this was not just a lucky week. I have a couple of cases here, a pair programming one and monolith migration. Let me start with the pair programming case. But first of all, raise your hands who believe that pair programming is good for team's performance. Okay, I didn't expect that. Okay, I thought, and okay, then please show me your hands who practice it regularly. Okay, then that's the question. It's a very controversial practice, right? There may be real benefits. Looking at your first, everybody was in favor, but the objections are also real, right? And when we talk to experts, our principal engineers, we often see at least those 3 objections. First, the cost. What if we introduce pair programming and then we just cut our throughput in half, that kind of thing. Second is, what if 2 people working at the same keyboard, they are committing same mistakes and we lose independence in code review, right? And our quality will drop. And the third one, maybe, okay, it works for complex tasks, but it's overkill for simple ones, right? Those are very reasonable objections. No stupid feedback here, of course. So we need to turn all this into something testable. So the team decided to make an experiment. So the team turned the debate into a hypothesis. Their assumption was that their real constraint was not coding speed, but coordination, code review, coordination, and context switching costs, and the quality of code review. And the bet was to introduce pair programming to solve this. This was also relatively low-cost investment experiment because the team occasionally practiced pair programming, and also what's good with pair programming is that It doesn't require really any sophisticated tooling or major rework. You just agree with the team how and when you pair, and you just start practicing it continuously, and that's it. The team also defined what they expected to see. If the hypothesis was right, they expected the velocity to improve. The change lead time was 10 hours, and they expected to become lower. And also at the same time, they wanted to achieve more speed, but not at the sake of throughput and quality. So the deployment frequency should stay the same or improve, and the quality should also remain at least stable, right, to address those concerns. Change failure rate should stay the same, and number of incidents or SLO violations also should not increase. Okay, complex slide. Let's look into the raw PR data. So I want to show you how we go from the raw data to process behavior charts. So each dot here is one PR deployed to production. X-axis is when it was deployed. And Y-axis is change lead time. Basically, in our case, how long it took this PR from created to production. Look at this highlighted PR. It was deployed in mid-February, and it took around 500 hours to get to production. So around 20 days. Even from this raw data, you can already see a lot of patterns, and maybe you can get a lot of useful insights about the team. First of all, the team was doing pretty well, I would say. So most of their PRs were created and shipped to production within the same day or within a few days. But still, there are some outliers, and also some deployed batch deployments or clusters. By the way, also different colors represent different services. But even the team introduced pair programming in October, and still this data is quite noisy and difficult to analyze. Right? Personally, myself, I do not really see if pair programming worked here by looking at this chart. So we need to aggregate to reduce noise. How we do it? We take all the PRs for 1 month, and then we calculate the median change lead time for it, and then we plot it on this graph. Here, this is the aggregated view. Before pair programming, change lead time was quite variable. It was fluctuating around average of 10 hours. After pair programming was introduced, it dropped to about 3 hours. So it's 70% improvement. And it also became less variable. So, and also the team checked deployment frequency also increased slightly, and the quality remained stable. So this was not split at the expense of throughput or quality. And for this particular team, in this context, the hypothesis worked. And because we measured it, we could address the previously raised concerns. There is another observation from the pair programming case. In software delivery, we often act as if we could prove the outcome upfront. But many changes do not work like that. The system is too complex, adaptive, and result depends on so many factors. The team skills, type of work, bottlenecks, external situation, and local context. Raise your hand who believe that the team could have convinced experts that they were wrong and that the pair programming would work for this particular team without running an experiment. Anybody? Yeah, zero chance. That is why it is valuable to design a system where a team can quickly test their hypothesis instead of trying to win debates up front. Let's move on to the second case. It's quite different. It's the legacy-based problem situation from the previous talk. We had the team here the justification was much easier. The pain was obvious. The team was working with an old Perl monolith, and deployments were semi-manual. More than 30 teams were working around this monolith, so there was obviously a lot of coordination overhead. And most experts would probably agree that yes, the monolith is the bottleneck, and the team would definitely benefit from moving to a microservice or micro front-end setup. One problem, though, this was not an easy change, right? This is usually high investment work. It required several months of work for this team. And when you invest several months of a team's time, you expect a meaningful payoff. So the team also defined the expected outcome. The baseline change lead time was around 50 hours, and they wanted it to cut in half or even less than 20, to become less than 20. So what happened? Before the migration, change lead time was around 48 hours on average. After moving to microservice setup, it didn't improve. It got worse. It went up to 80 hours. So at this point, the team had spent several months of work just to get slower. When they looked deeper, they found that indeed the technical bottleneck was removed, but a new policy bottleneck had appeared. The platform team decided to strengthen the code review process and introduced 2 additional mandatory approvals because of the quality. Once one of those approvals was removed, change lead time dropped to around 17 hours. Who was asking about this? Maybe this is another idea how to solve, to get aligned with the platform team, also from the previous talk. And this is the key lesson from the monolith case. Here the problem was not lack of justification. The justification was strong. Experts agreed. And the team did the work, but completing the planned migration was not the same as improving the system. For a while, the opposite happened. So we migrated is an activity, and change lead time dropped from 50 hours down to 17 hours is an outcome, and that is what we should verify. If you want to try this, start small, pick one stable team, collect a couple of months of DORA data, build a simple process behavior chart, make one testable, choose one testable hypothesis, make this change and watch the system. Did it actually work or not? If yes, then this is something that you definitely can celebrate with your team and report with confidence to your leadership. If not, then this is a feedback. Maybe you need to dig deeper, or maybe you need to roll back the change. If you'd like to go deeper, these are the sources behind this talk. Wheeler, Goldratt, Accelerate, Vacanti for foundations, and a couple of my articles for practical applications. Oh, one small thing about my commute. Today I walk to the office again, not because cycling became slower, it's still faster, but I just realized I had been optimizing for a wrong metric. Satisfaction matters to me more. Thank you.